How's it going, fish folk? Those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Austin, and this is Fantastic Freaks. So recently, after some fairly recent storms here in my area, I ran into one of the worst nightmares a fish keeper can run into, and that is a power outage. And by nightmare, I truly mean if you're like me and have all sorts of fish, a power outage can truly be nothing short of a nightmare. When you think about it, pets like dogs, cats, rabbits, ferrets, hamsters, all that kind of stuff really don't need electricity to be kept, whereas fish, on the other hand, are heavily dependent on electricity. Thus, long-term power outages can be devastating to a fish tank. However, there are some things you can do to help prepare yourself should this nightmare come to be, and in this video, I'm going to do exactly that. With all that spoken, here are my top 5 tips for helping you and your fish get through a power outage. Tip number 1, keep oxygen flowing into your tank. While yes, fish do have gills as they can breathe underwater for a lot longer than we can, we still need to get oxygen into the tank for them somehow. And not only do air pumps help provide oxygen in the tank for your fish to help breathe, if you got live plants, it can also prove to help keep them going as well as adds a little bit of water flow to your tank, keeping your tank water from getting a little stagnant. And the reason why it's important to not let your tank water be stagnant for too long is that can really cause parameters such as nitrates, nitrites, and potentially ammonia in your tank to get really out of hand after a number of hours go by. But if you have a little bit of oxygen going in your tank that's creating a little bit of water flow, that is going to save you a countless amount of time. It is going to help really push that off, and overall not only just help keep your fish breathing alright, it's going to help provide, as I said earlier, some water flow to help keep the parameters in check, at least for a little bit longer. Usually, even without an air pump, you should be okay for about 2, maybe 3 hours, depending on 1, how big your tank is, 2, how heavily it is stocked. But if you don't have that, there is another way. Another method you can do is the pitcher or cup method. What you do is get a cup like so and scoop it into the tank like so. And you want to lift it a little bit above the tank here, not too much to where you're going to make a mess though, of course. And then you want to slowly pour some of that water back into the tank. And on its way down, that water will pick up some oxygen as it falls back into your tank. As crazy and simple as it perhaps may sound, yes, a simple cup could indeed save your fish from suffocation. Tip number 2 is have a sponge filter. I really need to make a video about the benefits of sponge filters. Obviously, if your power goes out, not only is your air pump out, but any filter that has a plug-in like this, such as a hang-on-the-back filter, or a canister filter, or any internal power filter, isn't going to be of any use to you. If only we could put something with our battery-operated air pump that could not only add air and oxygen to our tank, but filter it as well. Sponge filters to save the day! While a sponge filter may not be the most scenic or alluring thing to put in a fish aquarium, it can have all sorts of benefits, including through a power outage. If you connect it up to that battery-operated or portable air pump, it can not only add aeration and oxidation to your tank, it can also provide a great source of biological filtration that'll not only help keep your fish healthy, but looking good in the process as well as some of your plants that you may have in there if you have live plants like myself. And if you have live plants, it's a little extra bonus filtration. Live plants feed off those nitrates and nitrites that can toxify water as one of their main food sources. And while that's only going to go so far if you don't have any filtration, a sponge filter can help you from going over the top for a long period of time. Now, if that being said, I'm not saying that you can just go ahead and put like a 10-gallon or 25-gallon grade sponge filter and a 55 or a 75. While that's better than nothing, that's only going to get you so far. If you have like a 55-gallon tank or like even a 40-gallon breeder, go and get at least a 60-gallon grade sponge filter. And honestly, if you can fit bigger than that or find bigger than that, go for it. The bigger the sponge filter, the more it's going to be able to handle in terms of filtration wise. Thus, the more time it's going to be able to buy you in keeping your parameters in check. And to be clear, I'm not saying to go ahead and put a 60-gallon sponge filter in a 10 or 5-gallon aquarium, but do get an efficiently sized sponge filter. Even if you can only find a 60-gallon sponge filter for a 75-gallon tank, that's going to buy you a lot more time than a small little 10-gallon grade or 25-gallon grade sponge filter will. Number 3 on the list is maintain temperature. With all this talk about keeping oxygen and aeration going through your tank, as well as a little bit of filtration, it can be easy to forget another parameter, and that's the temperature of your water. One thing you can do to help keep the temperature up in your aquarium is get a blanket and just wrap it around the aquarium, and it'll kind of work as like a saran wrap, or like more so an insulation to help keep that temperature up in your tank. Kind of like insulation does in a house. You should also consider putting a cleaner blanket over the top of the tank to also help keep that temperature in the tank. And for you freshwater folk out there, if you have a natural gas water heater, like myself, you can go ahead and just pour some water from the hot faucet into a cup or a bucket, whatever you prefer, and then just manually pour it into the tank, which, backtracking as I said earlier, can help with aeration and oxidation in your tank as well. Just be careful not to just toss the water in, thus potentially stirring up some stuff in your tank, because of course, if you don't have any filtration going on, then you create new problems. Or if you got some cold water fish, like goldfish per se, what you can do to try to keep the water temperature down in this case is put some cold water in there, or ice cubes as well if your fish are hardy enough. On a side note of this temperature point, if you don't have some sort of thermometer in or on your tank, get one. It can save your fish's life, especially in a situation like this. Tip number 4, disturb the fish as least as possible. I know after a couple of things I say, this might sound a little contradictory, but hear me out. Trust me, when the power goes out and all the systems to your tank shut down, your fish can be just as anxious and confused as you. With the filter, the aeration all going off, thus changing a little feel in the water flow, that and the light turning off, thus changing their vision and such, your fish, rightly so, can get just as stressed out as you. Well, depending on the size of your tank, you do occasionally want to check on the tank, make sure the parameters aren't getting out of hand, thus maybe put in a little bit of prime, maybe some hot or cold water as we mentioned earlier. But other than that, you want to leave the tank alone as much as possible so not to stress out your fish any more than they already may be. This includes also avoiding like any flashing lights, thus keeping your flashlight out of the tank as it could potentially spook your fish. While when power goes out at first, your fish may be frantically swimming about, all confused and stressed, and rightly so. After a while, the darkness usually tends to calm the fish, as of course you turn the lights off before they sleep, so it'll eventually help them calm down as long as you just don't disturb the fish and just let them calm themselves down, basically. And yes, again, you do want to check on your tank occasionally just to make sure the parameters don't go totally crazy if your power stays out for extended periods of times. Like once it is out for a little more than I'd say 3 hours, regardless of the tank size, or at least with me anyway, I'm checking to make sure that parameters aren't starting to go bad. And after the first test, give it about another hour or 2, more like 2, before you go and test it again. Just trying to disturb the fish as less as possible while still making sure that things stay in check to where it's not going to be harmful for them. Tip number 5 is keep yourself calm. Namaste, fish keepers. Namaste. I know it's more easily said than done perhaps, but the best thing is at some point, just sit down, make a plan in case the power outage does happen, because it doesn't matter where you live in the world, power outages can, and most likely at some point, will happen. Just sit down, make a little plan, maybe get some supplies as well if you need to, just in case the emergency does come aboard. That way, when the situation arises, you're ready to go. Just get that battery-operated air pump connected to the air hose, get a sponge filter on there too if you can, and if need be, wrap up the tank after a little bit of time to keep the heat in, or get some ice cubes to keep the temperature down, and just execute your plan. And once you do that, just walk away and disturb the fish least as possible. In summary, make a plan. When a situation arises, execute the plan as you thought of it, and then just walk away. And then if need be, every couple hours per se, test the parameters, and then act accordingly then. But that, fish folk, is my top 5 tips for helping you get through a power outage with your tank or tanks, whatever it may be. Let me know what you think. Was this video helpful? Maybe you have some tips of your own. Let me know what those might be in the comments below. If you like this video overall, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you're new to my channel, consider clicking the subscribe button to stay in the loop with everything I do, from tip videos, top 5 videos like this, and plenty more coming on the road. As I said earlier, I got a couple other videos that are almost done, but after having a power outage and having a little bit of tragedy strike down here in my fish room as well, I wanted to go ahead and make a video to hopefully keep you guys from having as least amount of stress as possible when this happens. Because as I said earlier, it doesn't matter where you're at in the world, a power outage can and at some point will likely happen. And admittedly, I myself was not very well prepared for it. And unfortunately, in this fish keeping hobby, mistakes can cost you big prices. And I ended up losing a few fish for it. To be precise, 3 rainbows. I lost a fantail goldfish in the 125 here. But probably the one that stings the most for me is we lost my dragon puffer mushu. Overall, I was not prepared enough for a power outage. Having 25 plus tanks down here, I don't have anywhere near enough battery operated air pumps to supply them all when a power outage happens for me. And the power, as I said, for me earlier, was out for a little over 3 hours, which is more than enough for nitrates and ammonia to kick into a tank, especially for a tank like a freshwater puffer that has a very high protein diet. But, you know, I'm now working on getting some stuff to hopefully keep this from happening again. But hopefully this video can get to you guys before a tragedy strikes so you don't have to learn the same way I did. Believe me, it's not a fun way to go. But again, guys, I hope this video helps you out and prepares you for the situation, because again, at some point, it's likely to happen. I hope it never does. But hopefully, if and when it does happen, this can help you out and make everything turn out just a-okay once your power returns. As always though, guys, thank you for watching my video and all the support you guys give. We're getting closer to 700 subs, which is super exciting. Getting closer and closer to 4 digits here yet. And of course, guys, I will see you all in my next video, which will be coming out shortly, guys. Stay fantastic.